Hello and welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James and I talk about 3 areas we've noticed happening lately, particularly in James's field of ghostwriting, but maybe in other creative domains too. They relate to people buying creative services, creatives choosing high-volume production to compete for this demand, and the question about how do these creatives maintain capacity to get the work done. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, James.
So, you know why I like science?
No, why do you like science?
Because it can be really, really important and absolutely hysterical at the same time.
Really?
Yes. There's this company, 2 women researchers are coming up with a menstrual pad that can do analyses,
Oh,
health analyses,
shit.
screen for different diseases,
Yeah.
our iron deficiency, all these kinds of health things.
Wow.
So these, women who use this menstrual pad can get like basically monthly blood work done.
Holy shit, man.
Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
But to produce this thing, they're still in the production. They've got it, they're ironing out the details. But to produce this thing, they had to create menstruating robots.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. To be able to test this thing.
What the hell?
Yeah. Is that the funniest thing? So I'm listening to NPR and then they're having this very serious discussion. Yes, it's a health menstrual pad. And they're like, well, how did you develop this? Well, we first had to develop the menstruating robot.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah. With all
Wow.
seriousness. Like there's no giggling.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I'm calling them out on the non-giggling. I think they know what they're doing. It's
Well, you,
it's kind of funny.
I bet you were giggling as you
I
listened.
was giggling. Yes. Yes.
I'm
There was
giggling just hearing about it.
yeah.
You know what?
I'm
I'm picturing,
wiggly and giggly.
it's funny, and I'm picturing robots wearing aprons and stuff for some reason. I don't know, call me a sexist, but I'm just like, really?
Does the robot feel embarrassment? You know, did it?
Is it wearing its period underwear? You know, the underwear that women wear because they know it's going to get wrecked.
And complaining I need more oil.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
No. So in all seriousness, the reason why I bring that up at the beginning of what we're going to talk about here is we're going to take a little bit of a scientific approach, or at least a more organized approach
Then normal
than normal.
for gifted
Way
underachievers?
more organized than normal.
Okay, good.
So, because we've broken this into 3 sections
Yes.
that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, section number 1,
Mhm.
people are buying creative services for their own vanity,
Vanity projects.
vanity projects, but their own vanity
Yeah,
too.
true. Yeah.
2, creatives are choosing high volume production over quality to meet this market, this vanity market.
Yeah. This vanity demand. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then number 3 is how do these creatives
Hmm.
maintain the capacity for large volume production as supposed solopreneurs,
Yes.
right? And we're not gonna name somebody, but we are gonna call somebody out.
Yeah, they'd have to, I mean, first of all, they'd have to listen, which they probably don't. But the other part is, yeah,
So
we have a case study,
we
basically.
have a case study, yes.
Mm.
So following our organization, people buying creative services for vanity and or vanity projects.
Yeah.
Pat, what do you
Mhm.
think? What are your
Well,
thoughts?
I think it's always been the thing, actually. So if you're thinking about you gave me, I'm just going to steal your example from earlier. People commissioning, say, I don't know, Rembrandt to do a portrait of their niece or their daughter or whatever. That's a vanity project. Nobody's going to see that. It'll end up in a museum eventually, but they want to be able to show their friends, "Ooh, I got a top of the line artist to do this portrait." Or
Mhm.
current terms, I'm very much aware that getting people are trying to write, in many cases, their own memoir without understanding really the audience for memoir it's very thin, there's not a lot there's been so many memoirs about my year without wheat that that it's just like nobody gives a shit anymore about
Right,
your life
right.
unless it's really specifically created and targeted and all that stuff. You're not going to sell very many copies. So that's the part where people are writing, say, a memoir, or if they can't write, they're using somebody like yourself, a ghostwriter, to write the memoir for them. And that's a bit of a vanity project.
Mhm.
And in some cases, in some cases, it's not so much vanity as it is sort of platform building, if it's a business memoir
Mhm.
or something, and they're still working. But many of the people I know who are writing memoirs are retired. They're not still working. They're doing
Mhm.
it to pass on to their progeny, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
it's not a creative act in my view to the same degree that, especially if you hire somebody to write it for you, to the same
Mhm.
degree that actually, writing a different type of book is. Maybe I'm biased. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree with all that, and I think there is a difference between hiring a ghostwriter because you want to write something, really meaningful that has literary qualities to it, that you want to try and, either reach a sizable audience. And you
Hmm.
can do that through a hybrid publisher or going the traditional publishing route.
Yeah.
I kind of don't, I don't really have too much bias there. So there's that person. And then, yeah, there's the person who wants to capture their life,
Yeah.
leave it as a legacy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
My grandkids, here it is,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, which I think is all fine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I've got
And,
no
and
beef
we've
with
been
it.
doing it for centuries. I mean, go into any museum,
Yeah.
and the bulk of the artwork is going to be portraiture that initially somebody commissioned
Hmm. Yeah.
for, for their own reasons. So there's that. And I wonder too if in, the movie world, for example.
Hmm.
I know that companies hire these smaller production companies to make movies, for marketing purposes, but also to promote the brand and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there's individuals,
Hmm.
uh, doing the same thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm a CEO, captured in like a 5 minute or 10 minute little mini documentary about me kind
Gee,
of thing.
yeah, I bet you're right. I would be, because it's kind of a no-brainer. If you want to pitch yourself for anything or pitch your company, you might want to have a 5-minute movie about your journey to becoming the CEO of that company on
Mhm.
hand. Yeah.
Yeah, and growing your profile,
Yeah.
right? So this has been out there forever.
Mhm.
And I think probably you could say forever there's been those in the creative, I guess we could call it the creative economy,
Maybe, yeah.
right?
I don't know.
Creative professionals who either to support their more artsy, creative, personal projects,
Yeah.
do take these commissions
Yeah.
to make some money. And so
Mm.
that brings us to the next thing of creatives choosing high volume production over quality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, this is I think where there's a contrast to be made that there are ghostwriters uh, who want to serve
Yes.
this market.
Hmm.
And they're positioning themselves to do it. And maybe it's also part of a larger effort that, yeah, they'd love to ghostwrite really amazing biographies, and that kind of thing. But they also see a real profit potential
Hmm.
in these more sort of vanity kind of areas, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. And then there's the people who one person in particular who we will not name because he seems like he might be litigious.
Yeah.
uh, who is pushing out high volume,
Yeah. Really high volume.
really high volume, claiming to write big, meaty books in a in weeks,
Weeks.
weeks.
Weeks that you can count on one hand.
Yes, we, which, depending on whose hand it is, with my polydactyl,
Up to 7 weeks for you.
up to 7 weeks for me. But for a standard human hand, we're not going to say that number because it might get us in trouble. But that person is claiming to be able to produce monumental pieces of work
Yes.
in that amount of time.
And part of their claim is that they do not use subcontractors. All of the writing is done by them.
Yes, the term solopreneur
Yeah.
is working here.
Yeah.
That they're sitting in their little creative cubbyhole, just churning this stuff out, and it's just this impressive quality that, the implication, what is implied by this piece of media that we have viewed is that the, big five publishers, agents, bookstores are clamoring for these products.
That's the impression given for sure. Yeah, the implication is that although you want your stuff in the bookstores, and that's what will happen if you work with this person, you'll get a bestseller. It's also sort of positioned as a shortcut to navigating traditional publishing, which can take a long time and is gate gate kept by woke cosmopolitan types.
Right, right. Avoid the gatekeepers,
Yeah.
take over ownership, all those kinds of things. And I think, to be clear, right, normally this sounds like we would be talking about a hybrid publisher, which
Yeah.
is sort of a version of self-publishing.
Yeah.
And we're not, right? We're
Mhm.
talking about a different model that this person is promoting, pushing that they can do this high volume production at
Yeah.
high quality,
Yeah. Them
which
alone.
right, them alone. And the implication further is, obviously solopreneur, they're not subcontracting out the writing.
No.
And the other implication would be that they're not using AI
Right.
for this.
It's the implication, but they don't ever state anywhere on
Right,
their various publicity avenues that they don't use AI. They don't talk about it, period.
right, right. So then it raises this question, right?
Hmm.
So creatives choosing high volume production over quality, right?
Yeah.
So I can see somebody making that choice, saying, look, I can write fast.
Yeah.
I can create, interview templates and then writing templates where I can bang stuff out,
Yeah.
right? And when you're talking about these more sort of vanity oriented projects, they're not so much looking for that literary quality,
Hmm.
right? The memoir that's going to break out on the New York Times, they're looking for something solid, right? So
Yeah.
I can see meeting that demand.
Yeah.
I can't see it doing even that, level of writing in the number of fingers,
Yeah.
equating to weeks.
Agreed.
And, and I want to put a little plug in here
Yeah.
because in the various media that we have been reviewing, there is a ghostwriter, Alec Quig,
Hmm.
Quig, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out, straight up guy, he is trying to meet this demand.
Yeah.
And he is doing it in a very open and honest way that feels very legitimate.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, all props to him.
Yeah.
The other individual, no.
Yeah. I mean, and Alec Quig is very clear that his process takes, what did he say, 8 to 12 months?
6.
6 to 12 months. That's more reasonable than one-handed weeks.
Right, right. It's far more realistic than one-handed weeks and honest. And and I would think too, if you're gonna lay out 100 grand, because that's what he charges,
Hmm.
Uh, you want somebody who's gonna use more than one hand number of weeks.
God's sake, yeah.
Right. You want a proper multi-hand job.
Yeah. You, wow. What are we, 12? Why did that make me laugh so hard?
Yeah.
That's
Well, we are, we can't, we can't go off brand here, right?
we're underachievers for a reason. Okay. Yeah. So how do so okay, so we're talking about creatives choosing high volume production over quality to compete for the sort of vanity demand, or whatever your market is. Maybe you do more than just the vanity demand, like the books that are just for legacy. Maybe you do other types as well, but it, basically our impression is that many of the books that we're talking about are meeting this demand that's kind of they're not, like you say, you just described it. They're not looking for a literary groundbreaker like Mary Card's memoirs.
Great example. Great example.
Yeah, yeah. That's a memoir that says so much about the actual genre of memoir. Like it transcends memoir in some ways. People who don't even like memoirs would read that book and go, "That's a fucking great memoir." So, or a good book, a good story. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about solidly done projects. Maybe some are better than others, but what our real question is how do you maintain the capacity for that level of production if you're not using subcontractors or AI? If you're presenting yourself as a solopreneur who does all the shit, not all the nitty-gritty, but you're doing all the writing, it just seems so unfeasible.
Right. Right. Yeah, and by contrast, right, there's other, just to show the other side of this equation, right? So
Yeah.
there's J.R. Moehringer, who wrote The Tender Bar.
Hmm.
That kind of opened a lot of doors for him, and he ended up doing Andre Agassi's best-selling memoir.
Yeah.
He did Prince Harry's memoir. I think he probably got paid like $1 million for each.
Probably,
And
yeah,
I think, from the reading I've done, and I could be a little off here, spent at least probably a year to 2 years, probably more on the 2 year side
yeah.
things. So again, this person who's doing the number of fingers on a standard human hand, uh, and claiming to produce at that quality, it doesn't feel real.
No, we invested that claim via media coverage, and we've seen that, yes, there are efficiencies being employed. There's
Mm,
definitely, sort of a cut, not a cut and paste, but like a template that's decided ahead of time. So no matter how unusual your story is or what kind of structure it calls for, you're not going to get that exploration. It's going to go into this particular structure that's been designed to harvest parts of your story to make a cracking, like maybe a compelling narrative, but it might not capture what you
mm,
want to get captured, because it's being done, it's sort of widgetizing your life to fit this template that this person has designed in
mhm.
order to possibly meet the high volume production schedule.
Right, right.
So is there anything wrong with that? Maybe it's not how I would want a memoir out there. But the question is really, it's about sustained creative capacity.
Mhm.
How do you sustain it? How do you onboard the client, do all that stuff completely solo? Maybe you've got
Mhm.
admin assistants or a VA or whatever, but it's still an incredible amount of work to build trust, to
Well, the interviews.
the interviews. Yeah.
You've got to do the interviews before you can start the writing. You've got to
Yeah.
plan, what is the structure, all these kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have questions, I guess, about if you've got this sort of really high volume creative practice that is not your own stuff,
Hmm.
but it's aimed at being a sort of a creative for other people. How do you maintain that
Yeah.
capacity?
Well, yeah, and I would take one step back that, the other piece that we noticed is the discussion is very much, it's not, I am going to produce high volume, so don't expect, this is what I do. The
Yeah.
discussion is much more on the I am an artist, I am creating, it's as if you're hiring, it's it's 1750 or whatever, and you're commissioning a portrait from a famous artist,
Yeah.
and who says, I'm going to really pay close attention to creating the best, most artistic portrait I can, so give me a big bundle of money. And then you find out that they're doing, like 20 or 30 of them at a time, and
Yeah.
it's not, you're not getting that artistry. You're not getting that craft.
No.
Uh, you're getting
Getting one of those velvet paintings with the big-eyed kids.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're getting a big-eyed velvet painting in the amount of time it takes to count to a standard number using the typical human hand.
We're such assholes. Okay.
So,
Anyway.
so anyway, so then you get into like, all right, so there's that piece of it, which is we don't. I think the listener can infer that we're not terribly happy about that. But then we look at, so one of our interests, core interests for the podcast is making more money and growing capacity.
Yeah.
And so I think what intrigued us is this person is obviously making more money and
Yeah.
he has obviously grown capacity, even though there's problems that we have. But how do these creatives rather, that are going for this high volume production as, solopreneurs,
Yeah.
so to speak, um, how do they do it?
Yeah. How do
Without,
they do
I
it?
guess the question is without using AI or
Yeah.
without in some way being, what's the right word? Having to kind of be the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain type thing, where it's not necessarily you feel like you're purchasing something that, isn't really accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could say, how do they legitimately do it? Like, how do they do it without sort of cheapening the product?
Yeah. Yeah, and we can think about, more broadly too beyond publishing, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, people still commission portraits or still commission paintings in general.
Yeah.
We talked about movie slash video, where you have businesses hiring production companies. There's a whole industry of video production companies
Yeah.
that are doing everything from commercials to these sort of small size corporate movie storytelling, and then
Hmm.
also actually doing feature movies for a lower budget, for a lower
Hmm.
price.
Yeah.
um so there's lots of examples of this out there.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. In other industries, for sure. And then, we were talking earlier, once you get locked into, say, the corporate video market, you're busy doing those. So it's very hard to get your own creative vision out there in the form of a movie, because you were making a living.
Right, right. Well, and that's the question that I think, we face and we and have talked about quite a bit, and really gets to this more money, more capacity
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
which is we have creative businesses that are, I would say, thriving.
Hmm. Yeah.
I feel very busy.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
very busy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we have these personal creative projects that we want to carve out time for, and we're really struggling with being
Yeah.
able to do that.
Yeah. They're constantly getting sidelined. So the question that we want to answer, do we have ideas aside from that they're using AI possibly, and we're not saying anybody in particular is using AI,
Hmm.
or that they're not actually, as they position themselves, they have a large team and they are subcontracting some of the writing, or that they've created such efficiencies that they can do what is not a finger. of one-hand project in terms of weeks. They can do that consistently 50 times a year. Wait, 25 times a year
or more.
or more, right? Maybe some of those things are true. They're not,
Yeah. Well, I think the piece I can see it being true because you templatize the interview process
Yeah.
where it's very standard, very straightforward. You're doing the same thing kind of over and over, and you templatize then also the writing process.
Yeah, you're cutting and pasting. Whatever fits into your
Yeah,
template gets put in this person's life story book or whatever it is. But
right.
um, I
Which
guess what
means
I,
you're producing virtually the same thing over and over and over, right? So
yeah, just
you're not
different
getting the
details.
quality point.
Yeah, that's what I guess what I'm asking is, to me, it's the sustainability part that I'm very puzzled by because I know that when I do something like I've written a book in short period, could I do it every week? No, I couldn't do it
Mhm,
every week. I couldn't do it every third week.
mhm,
It's like it takes a lot of energy to create an entire experience for a reader,
mm.
right?
Well,
It's
that's
not,
really, yeah, really well put, by the way.
yeah, it does. It takes a lot of creative energy, it takes a lot of just even physical energy to sit there for the amount of time it takes to create a book. That even no matter how many templates you have, you're still sitting there
Yeah.
for many, many, many hours. I mean,
Mhm.
hundreds of hours, right? And then you're also running a business where you're onboarding clients, you're doing this other stuff. I'm talking about the person who shall not
Yeah.
be named. Um, so the problem to me is sustainability if the model being presented as factual is true, which is that there is no use of subcontractors. And if we try to expand this to other fields, let's say, you're a portrait artist and you get commissioned. The the sitter has to be there, unless you're working off photographs. You
Yeah.
can't pretend you're doing it in 300 hours when it's only taking you 30.
Yeah. And how many people, again, there's charging a lot of money for this stuff. So if you're a portraitist and you charge somebody $100,000 for their portrait and then tell them, I'm going to have it to you in a couple of days, you
Yeah.
know, how does that feel, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or several weeks, like you could just do it and then hang on to it and then deliver it later when it seems more reasonable. Right? That's what I would do if I was going to do something like that.
Dust it off a year later and be like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
phew,
Wow, right under the wire. But I mean, and you could say, oh, you could lead into it saying, here's my process, and I'm going to need 9 photographs of you from these different angles. And yes, we'll do like 5 sittings, and one will be now, one will be a month from now, whatever. You could fake it that you're working hard, um, and keep your process sustainable, but it's a fucking lie, right? How can you,
Yeah.
I don't get it. Why would anybody do that, I guess?
Yeah.
Just for the
So,
money.
it's so the integrity, right?
Yeah.
And so okay. So here's a question for you, right? So you've been editing for a long time.
Yeah.
When you think about your process when you first started,
Yeah.
right? First hung up the shingle,
Oh God.
compared to the process that you have now, obviously you've found and created and generated efficiencies, right?
Yes. I have systems.
Okay. So what would you, if, without getting into too much detail,
Yeah.
how would you describe your system?
Oh, I have a system. I have a process basically. So I
Mhm.
do it. I do a first read a certain way. Then I do a book map a certain way. Then I write an editorial letter a certain way. Sometimes I'll do a chapter by chapter revision guide a certain way. Like every edit is different because every book is different, but I follow the
Mhm.
same steps to produce one. The difference is when I first started editing, I didn't have it's an unregulated field. There is no real training. There's certificate programs. I didn't even know about them. I was using my MFA program mentorship feedback on my stuff as a model for how I would work with other people's manuscripts because it was so thorough, so great, like just really um, feedback that grew me as a writer. That's my goal, right? For as an editor to make myself obsolete with one client after another because I want my feedback to make them better writers. And so my system originally wasn't a system at all. I probably worked for about 3 years figuring out. a system,
Mhm.
and then going from maybe, I'm going to say 70, 80 hours per edit to what it takes me now, which is by no means a third, it's still a long process, but and I'm way better at the craft stuff. I know my shit so thoroughly.
Mhm.
I teach editing now. It's like it's
Mhm.
very I'm efficient as hell, but
Right.
I am not doing high volume work.
No. And so and how we first met was I had a book that I needed edited,
Yeah,
and so I went to the Editorial Freelance Association, put out a call for pitches, and
yeah,
bumpity bum chose you. And you did an awesome job. So
thank
then
you.
every book after that I've been able to send to somebody is
Mhm.
you, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Because there's a quality, right? So one, I know there's timely.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get, yeah, this is great. I can do it. I'll have it to you next year.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm a
You know,
bear for
there's,
turnaround time. I don't like
yeah,
to waste writers' time.
yeah, and it's, and so, but you're not going to, say, yeah, I'll have it in a week, and then I'm going to keep getting like,
No, fuck no. No, no.
all
Yeah,
that
you're
kind of
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's you maintain a really high level of quality, right?
Thank you
And so
very much.
that's what I try to do with the ghostwriting too, is
Yeah.
I started out not knowing what I was doing other than the writing piece,
Hmm.
and developed ways to be more efficient and sort of saying, oh, okay, here's the way that I need to start. I need to spend a lot of time up front to be able to be better and more efficient at the writing process.
Yeah, exactly.
And, and those kinds of things. But I could not conceive of doing what I do at the same quality level as a high volume output engine.
Same here.
And I can't conceive of um, capacity builders that would turn what either of us does or any creative into this high volume output engine without having to cut real corners.
Yeah, loss of quality. Absolutely. Even working with other humans, I worked with my friend Doug. He's a writer. He's a very good writer. A few years into my editing business, he said, "Would you teach me how to edit?" And, so I worked with him. I was always very upfront with clients. You're working either with me or with him. So the client would always know who they're working with, and then man, was it a fair commitment of time and energy to mentor a very good writer with lots of training, but not a
Mhm.
trained editor into the process that I had developed, like the system. It was, I oversaw everything. It was not a shortcut at all. If Doug and I
Mhm.
had kept working together, it would have
Mhm.
become a much more streamlined thing, but he had to move and just, got a family, got a jobby job and stuff. So, so I don't do it anymore. I do not bring on subcontractors because I don't have the bandwidth to train them to the
Yeah.
level that I expect of myself.
Right. Yeah, no, it's exact same thing for me is I wish there were two of me,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't outsource or subcontract to another writer just because I feel, and it's not that I want to be careful that I'm not saying I'm the best writer in the world, and so why would I hire anybody lesser? It's just
yeah,
I know what I'm doing, and I know my relationship with the client, I know my relationship with the material, I know my process.
yeah,
And so another writer, yes, they could do a very good job, but they wouldn't do the same job that I do,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so, yeah, so it wouldn't occur to me to do that. Absolutely would not occur to me to take an interview for a chapter, for example, and plug it into an AI app
Ah,
and have it spit out a piece of writing that I then adapt a little bit here and there.
ooh, I'm feeling shock right now. My mouth just dropped open because that's, I guess, the logical, or one of the logical questions is how are you using tech to speed up your process for these very high volume producers of creative work?
Yeah. Yeah. How are you using tech? And again, we sort of have these two examples that we will not name one, but the other, Alec Quig.
Yeah,
Alec really has a process and he lays it out on his website. Here's how I work. It's
yeah,
going to take this amount of time, depending.
yeah.
6 to 12 months is a huge range. And it's really about the range that I give to people too, because I say it is hard to predict how complicated this book is going to get. Also, you may disappear for a little while.
Yeah, that
Life
happened.
may drag you away. Life, there's all these different variables. So I'm going to give you a, solid range.
Yeah,
And here's the variables that can impact that.
yeah,
And, those kinds of things. And so then looking then at this vanity market.
yeah.
And we've identified, a couple of the writing domain, the visual art domain, the, movie domain,
Hmm.
and I'm sure, we could expand into others as well. But serving them, seeing it as an opportunity
Hmm.
and serving them in a way that, has a high standard of quality and integrity, but doing
Yeah,
it quickly because they want it fast. They're
yeah,
not. You know, they may blanch if you say, "Oh, it's going to be 6 to 12 months." They're like,
yeah,
I just want this for my kids."
yeah. Yeah, but
Um,
honoring their need, basically, they need it, right? They don't just want it. They need it. Nobody pays that much money for something that they just want. Unless
mm,
they're loaded, But so they need this. They need this to sort of extract the meaning from their life. It's not an idle request, I have all the respect in the world for people who either write or get somebody to help them write or get somebody to write their story because they do it for reasons that are important to them. And I don't think it's to be trifled with, I mean, I get it why you'd want to go with somebody who only takes the number of weeks that are analogous to the number of fingers on one's hand, unless you're James, who's polydactyl. But I get it. I get in wanting a fast turnaround. I get being sold on the idea that this process is so revolutionary that it's going to do what other people can only do in 6 months. And that you're going to be one of how many 10 to 15 people I do this for this year, this calendar year. Like, I get wanting to believe that, but I don't believe it myself that it's possible without
yeah.
employing either tech or other humans to sustain that level of creativity over that period. Because having written books, I just know
Mhm.
that, and maybe I'm incredibly lax and inefficient, but and I'm not a production, I'm not a factory, right? But I just feel like what's being lost and how is it being presented as a good option?
Right. Right. Yeah, and I've had people say, "Look, I'm not looking to publish this. I want to get something down. This is a legacy
Yeah,
that I."
yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah,
And so then, I'll say, "Okay, well, let's do really well-structured interviews to
yeah,
create a transcript that I can just then basically take that and turn it into narrative."
yeah,
And I'm not making a promise of anything other than to transform a discussion into a written piece,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
and that's fair. But I
Yeah.
think that is not the promise that the person who shall not be named is making. That person is making a much bigger promise, which is that this book will
Yeah.
transform your life.
Yeah. All right. I think that I think we've hit it. What do you think?
Well, I think we've identified our discomfort with this idea and our curiosity about how this level of creativity can be maintained without sacrificing quality.
Yeah, and I think maybe in our heart of hearts, we feel like we want to maintain the legitimacy and that we do real professional work.
Yeah,
And it's when people come along who, you know, it appears are doing less than that. It makes us all not look good in the end.
yeah, yeah. It cheapens the profession.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit well.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
All right. Thank you so much for that illuminating conversation.
Yes. Good stuff. Well organized this time.
Yeah, we say. Well, fuck yeah. Maybe we're on a production system now.
Yeah.
Couple of
We're
scumbags
pumping them out.
churning out shit. Okay. Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.